Go.
Oh, like that.
All right. Good evening, Maneru, the Madekwana, and welcome to obviously another session and another episode of Live Chats on Monday. Our apologies for the slight delay. We did not mean to make it a bunch of time affair, just the technology gremlins getting the better of us today. But of course, as you know, this is the second season of Live Chats on Monday. We only have this for 30 minutes, so you can go watch your soapies and eat food afterwards. But afterwards, we are in the final lap, as you probably would know. This is the final month of our episodes. 2 more weeks to go, and then we call it a wrap. But tonight, on this special night, we have a special guest. Mrs. Phasha, how are you?
I'm good, and you? Well.
Thank you for gracing us. And I think a lot of people out there are probably thinking, and they probably saw the posters, and I know a lot of people have been expecting tonight's discussion because it's very, very relevant. But if you're wondering who she is, of course, Mrs. Phasha here is a mother of 2. She is a wife and a specially barracking employee relations specialist. And I was trying to think earlier how employee specialist. Like, what did you tell your parents? You know, what's employee specialist?
Well, when I first school, and I HR. I wanted to study HR. But yeah, in the HR course, I did well with my employee relation as a module. So that's how I ended up doing employee relations. It's also called labor relations.
Right. No, so
Yes.
it's a fancy name, that thing, you.
Yes. So it was my lectures that actually applied for me.
Oh, that's good to hear.
They said you are in a wrong field, you should be here. Yeah, that's how it came about.
And in essence, what does your job entail? Are you the person that they send to deliver the Section 189 notices?
Hey, I'm the bearer of bad news. The bearer of bad news in simpler terms. Yeah, I always say, but that's not the only thing I do. Yeah, employee relation, it's a field that actually manage discipline in the workplace. It's about the relationship between the employer and employee. It's us who are the bridge, you know, to make these two parties to work together in harmony. So part of our work is management of discipline, you know, just making sure that the work environment is a conducive environment for both parties. That's basically it.
At this time that we find ourselves in, I'm sure there's never been anything like this in history, Njay, for as long as we've been alive. And I think I was just trying to imagine, how does that look on an employee-employer relations perspective? The fact that we have to work from home, people can't really manage their employees as they normally would in an office setup. You know, our relationships as the employer and the employee at an all-time high or an all-time low as a result of this separation that we've experienced in the past year?
Sure, the work environment has changed so much that, you know, you remember the employer management, they will always have the upper hand on the employee. But in these times that we are in, even employees take advantage of certain things like having to work at home. You know, the relationship itself, it has taken so much strain. And because of, we also try to make sure that the work environment is also a safe environment for both employers and employees. And with COVID, you know, it has become an issue that employees are found not to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, delivering, meeting deadlines, because they are not at the manager's reach, you know, in that sense that they need to manage their own time and be very much disciplined. So it's chaotic. It is a trial and error. We are all trying to make sure that, you know, things that needs to go, and the employer will also expect employees to deliver as they are expected, you know. So it's a different time to live in. Those that controls can't control anymore. How do you control fully so somebody who's sitting at home? You know, so it's very difficult. And those that are working without proper equipment, you know, tools of trades, they can't function, you know. So this whole COVID thing, how to manage it, it has been a not easy journey for both employers and employees.
And from what you've seen, I think you would know that South African labor law is one of the toughest in the world. You know, firing an employee is not the easiest thing to do. Getting rid of someone who works for your company, you have to go jump through a number of hoops to be able to do that. But we have seen a record number of job losses. The unemployment rate right now is at a record high. Not even in Ghana, apartheid anyway, if they were reporting the right things, has it been this bad? Partly because of this COVID shutdown situation, companies, of course, saying they are losing money, etc., etc. And how do we move on? Is this something that you think is going to be fixed anytime soon, or have we hemorrhaged the relationship so much so that we need to work at it for longer before we can even dive into this fixing of the COVID story?
What has been happening, it's something that I don't think will change anytime soon, because a lot of damage has been caused. And when you look at the fact that the strain that the relationship took due to COVID, everybody's trying to keep their jobs, you know. When you watch whatever that you have now, you are trying to hold on to it. But yet at the same time, there's other parts where people are just losing their jobs, you know. Employers are cutting, you know, they're replacing staff, they're taking less to accommodate and so forth and so on. So I don't think to fix this will take a shorter period of time. I mean, the work environment has had to be transformed in a way that it has never happened before. So moving forward, we need to move from where we are, you know, forward. But I don't think the change, I mean, you can imagine now, those that have got the tools and everything, if they have to now go back to office on a daily basis, you know, it has got advantages and disadvantages, but all in all, it needs discipline, it needs commitment, especially from the side of the employees, to be able to deliver service as expected. We shouldn't take advantage of the fact that you are functioning from home. So I don't think we'll go back to normal, as they call it, the new normal.
It is the new normal indeed. Things don't look like they used to back in the day. We really are finding ourselves in uncharted territory here. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about tonight is this issue of the vaccine. We know from the reports anyway, from the news, that people are hesitating to take this vaccine. There are stories doing the circles, they're putting things in there, they're putting microchips, kahararuna, etc. There's many conspiracies that are making people stay away. In fact, a survey that was just done, released last week, says about 60% of South Africans are willing to get the vaccine. They haven't really gotten it, but at least 60% of the total population are willing, which leaves about slightly less than half. About 40% are saying, no, I don't want that thing for whatever reasons, religious, constitutional, who knows, whatever else. Now we see a line of companies coming out. You know, Curo was the first out of the blocks, then Discovery soon afterwards, and then Sanlam also joined the queue. Now Water with its 60,000 employees is also saying, right, again, we're also going in that direction. But in essence, employers are saying, get the vaccination or else musebetsi ufedile. This work? Is this even possible that the employer can force us to get vaccinated?
You know what? This is a very controversial issue here. But what I can say about it is that I think eventually we are going to get there. It will be like that. You know, if you check recently, the minister in the directive indicated that they should actually make it as a risk assessment, meaning that the employer are given the prerogative to determine the risk assessment in terms of the OHS. And that in itself gives the employer the authority and the power to say, in my organization, they say the risk assessment should be done in a way that it should also take into consideration the operational requirements of the nature of the business of the employer. So basically, with that itself, it actually gives every employer to decide whether they want to make it compulsory or not. And then in the directives, they indicate, the steps that needs to be taken in order for the employer to make the vaccine compulsory. But my view is that I think we are going to go there. As you correctly say, some companies have actually tried, are also starting to make it mandatory. And the minute they talk about risk assessment, it simply means I must be able to assess the nature of my business and the risk involved. And then that will be a determiner whether my employees must be vaccinated or not. We all know that constitutionally, you have a right and so forth, but the employer, I always say, the employer always has the upper hand. You want to work, you want a job. You enter into an organization, they tell you, in this organization, we actually want our employees to be vaccinated because of the nature of our business, the operational requirements and so forth. So in order for you to get this job, you are required that you need to vaccinate. And if you want a job, what are you going to do? You are going to be vaccinated. You will find that in the near future, it will actually be that when you enter every organization, we know that they want to take you through, your assessments, and then they check, I'm telling you, it's going to be one of those things that they just put there and say, vaccine, are you vaccinated? Where is the ticket and so forth? And that's how basically I think the work environment is going to turn out to be. So we are going there.
From the way you say it, you're sounding it as something that's almost like an evolutionary thing. It's just happening, but nobody really is in control. Now, if we look at the American model, Biden has come out and said, companies, if your people are not vaccinated, I'm going to fine you, you're going to pay a fine. So in other words, the government is manipulating and ensuring that company and wagging the tail of the dog, in other words, by forcing companies to get their employees vaccinated to almost deal with this hesitancy issue. And you are saying South Africa is taking a different tack. Our president sits on TV and says, no, you don't have to get vaccination. If you don't want, that's fine. Yet, empowers the employer to say, okay, do the risk assessment that you're talking about, so much that they can then decide who must or must not get vaccinated on the operational level. So are we not seeing two sides of the same coin here, where governments don't want to legislate this thing and make it mandatory for us, but are using backhand tactics anyway to get us to get vaccinated?
Precisely that. There, it's your choice. If you don't want, you can. If you want to vaccinate, you can. If you don't want to vaccinate, it's your decision. But on the other side, it's actually empowering the employer to say, put it in the risk assessment, looking at the nature of your business. These are the steps that you need to follow to make sure that your employees are vaccinated. And like I said, if you want a job, if you want to keep the little that you have, the one that you have, as you know that many people are losing their jobs now. If you want to keep this, and put bread on the table, the chances are that you will comply at the end. So it's two-diced, it's two-faced. On the other side, there is a way that they're sneaking in this thing. And I mean, recently when the president was talking, he was actually congratulating companies that, are out there encouraging their employees to vaccinate and putting them there that, these are the ones that are doing the right thing. So even though we don't want some of us to vaccinate, but if you find yourself in a work environment, as they put it there, that it needs to be that the employer decides whether it's compulsory or not. So the minute the employer says, according to the nature of my business and my risk assessment, I think people should be vaccinated. Basically, that's what is going to happen. So it's very controversial, hey?
In other words, now you're saying, in terms of the employee, free will is dead. regarding this thing. You will get vaccinated if you want to work. Is that what we are hearing from you tonight?
It's getting there. I'm saying it's gonna get there. It's really gonna get there.
And I'm envisaging a big fight in the courts coming through. You know, one of these days, no one has yet gone to courts, which actually makes me ask a question before I ask the other one I wanted to ask. Labor has not really been active in trying to protect the interest of the employee in this. I have not seen one union coming out and saying this is not right. You know, we will fight for the rights of the workers to choose what it is that they want. Are they complicit, you think, in this whole mechanization here behind the scenes, or are they really disconnected from what the workers really want on the ground? What's your take when you're looking at this issue?
Yeah, you know, I agree with you. They are so slow in this. You know, government is taking a very fast pace and they are so slow. They are not doing enough. They are not saying enough. I think very soon, I can't anticipate, I can't estimate as to how much period it will take, but very soon we are going to find ourselves with organized labor, which is unions, having to enter into collective agreements with the employer regarding this issue. I don't know why is it that at this point in time, they are not coming out and protecting the interest of the workers, because it's the workers' decision whether to vaccinate, as the president said it from the onset. But then now with all these things that are coming on the other side, their pace is very slow. And I can tell you that once this is put in a collective agreement, of course, with different sectors of the employment, you know, once it's put in a collective agreement, it's one of those that when you don't do it, you'll be subjected to disciplinary processes because there is a collective agreement to it. So we are really heading to another direction that I don't think we are ready for. You know, we are just not ready for it. But I agree with you, our unions are taking a very slow pace at the expense of the workers. They should be out there and saying no, but it's not enough. They are not seen. And on the other side, the employer is coming up with all these regulations.
Yeah, and you touched on something earlier about the fact, the imbalance in power between the employer and the employee. The employer will always have the advantage, like you say. They have the money, they control the contractual relationship, and they, in essence, control what you do anyway for you to get the money that you want. So, in other words, we want the job, we want the salary, we want the security. Hence, we kind of bow down to what they want, even though we are supposed to be at an equal level in terms of our negotiation anyway. So with that you just said, in terms of what government is doing in terms of empowering the employer, who is already empowered to obviously, you know, do this assessment and say, nah, I want everybody to be vaccinated based on the operation requirements of my job. What legal options, if any, does an employee have at this moment in time to protect themselves, to still say, now we don't vaccinate because of 1, 2, 3. I don't want to vaccinate yet. I am qualified and employed in this job. I want to stay in this job. Can they even fight that fight going forward?
In the recent directive that has been issued, there is somewhere where they talk about if really an employee cannot, and they mention religious reasons and so forth, they say the employer must give reasonable accommodation, which means that the employer must provide the employee with tools of trade to be able to function fully at home, to work off-site, the office, so that this person doesn't have contact with other employees. But we all know that with this, I mean, for example, if you take somebody who is working in a retail store, working from home, it's not practical. How do you help customers while you are at home, you know? So to some, it will work like the way it's working now with those that have got comorbidity. They are given, you know, tools if you work for an employer that is able, they are giving you tools, you function from home, you are able to deliver, you need to manage your time. Like I said, it requires a lot of discipline. But in cases where you are working, like for example, in a trade, I mean, in a retail store, that is not practical. It will not work like that, you know. So there is some that will actually, with the directive, that will actually benefit, and there is some that the directive cannot work with them. And then if you are one of those, then you'll be compelled, you know, to come and be vaccinated if you still want the job, of course. Yeah.
Somebody has asked a question now, and they're saying initially, of course, in addition to that whole point, you get vaccinated whether you want to, you know, if you want to, I mean, sorry. And the whole point was, let's get as many people as we can to the vaccination point so that we reach this whole herd immunity thing, man. And that was the push, let's move 60%, 70%. If people are vaccinated, then that's fine. So in essence, the herd immunity was like a golden goose we're chasing after, which means at least even 30% of us could still remain unvaccinated and this thing would have been defeated. Have we lost that fight? Are we now saying we need 100% vaccination rates from an employer perspective? Because now we are being forced again. All of us employers, especially in schools, they are saying, Bona, you cannot come and teach and endanger our children, etc. Have we lost this idea and plot herd immunity now that we're forcing everyone to get vaccinated?
Definitely. I think we have moved away from that. From the time that, you know, the vaccine was starting, we understood that, you know, if a certain percentage of the population can vaccinate, you know, we'll be able to beat the virus and so forth. But the manner in which now this thing vaccine is going, it's true that it looks like they want 100% of vaccine. You know, they want all of us to be vaccinated, which is something that I agree with you. We have moved away from the initial mandate that we had to get the country at least 80% vaccinated. Now they are going for 100%. Unfortunately, if you are one of those that don't want to, you are in between a line to decide whether you fall on this side or on the other side. And unfortunately, on the side that you don't get vaccinated, you stand a chance to lose your job.
So I think what I want from you to hear from you as we almost wrap up this conversation of ours is the finality as things stand now. If my employer tells me to get vaccinated and now I don't want to vaccinated, am I going to lose my job? Is it cut, paste, and dry like that?
Well, I don't think at this moment it's cut and paste like that because of the directive that the minister gave. It's that put it in the risk assessment, assess the nature of the business, the operational requirements of the business. If you are an employer and you feel that your business, for it to function fully and smoothly, your employees need to be vaccinated because of the interaction they have with the public and so forth, you may make it mandatory for your employees to be vaccinated. So it comes as if at this stage, you can impose it, but consider this. Hence they say those that cannot because of religious reasons, see if you can give a reasonable accommodation of having them to function at home and so forth. So I don't know that when it gets to that point, remember, even though you're working from home, there are days that you need to be at the office when you need to do certain things. You will have be in contact with people at work. How are they going to manage that? But the answer to your questions directly is that it has not reached that stage where it says, if you don't vaccinate, you will be dismissed. It's still a threat to say, we are trying to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated. It's important for you to be vaccinated. And if you don't vaccinate, we can give you a reasonable accommodation to work at home and so forth. But mark my words, it will get to that point where a person refuses and says religious reasons and all this, and this person needs to be at work and have contact with other people, then it leaves the employee at the mercy of the employer. Eventually, it's going to get there. Once it's put in the risk assessment, obviously, the employer has got the prerogative to decide.
And who's checking that this risk assessment is accurate? If the employer just decides, Rona, we want everybody to get vaccinated for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons, and of course they type out a nice document that will satisfy the minister. Is there someone who actually go and check to make sure that this thing is for real, or just because they said it on paper, they mean it, and hence people must get vaccinated? Because that's almost taking me back to that whole thing. If then, the mandate, it's backdoor, is there to say the prerogative is the employers on whether to keep you or not on the employee. And yet the employer is the one who then must now play referee and decide what are their operational requirements. Is there some accountability of sorts to make sure that they don't then just do it for the sake of getting their way?
To answer this, you remember, even with other things, is the employer making their own rules, and they are the ones that must make sure that these regulations are implemented. So it's like you're making a regulation and you are also the monitor of the same regulation. So basically, it's their regulation. They are the ones that are going to monitor it, evaluate its success. At the end of the day, if we don't have active organized labor as unions to sit and challenge what has been put there, looking at the nature of the business of the employer and saying, this risk assessment is unreasonable, this category that you are using, that, if a person is this and that, that person is regarded as high risk. If our organized labor don't take the active role in it, during process of consultations, negotiations, and during collective bargaining, then we don't stand a chance as employees. Our unions must stand up and be in the front and negotiate and fight for this thing if they want to get it right. And the time is now, because the employer is strengthening their ways of doing things on the other side, while the unions are taking a very slow pace. So organized labor are the ones that are supposed to be monitoring the credibility that the employer uses and the fact that the criteria that is being used on the risk assessment, if it's reasonable to employees or not. So organized labor, they should take the lead in that.
And I think from our discussion earlier, we are quite clear that as things stand, organized labor is on the losing side, if not on the complicit side. I'm allowed to say that, of course, and to put it out there. We're not shame you can't, because you probably get in trouble when you sit in those meetings. But no, you are protected. You don't have to say anything in that regard. As a final word, Mrs. Phasha, I think we've kind of come to the end of our 30-minute allocation here. As a final word, you've sat in a lot of disciplinary hearings, you've sat in a lot of meetings and collective bargaining and bargaining councils, and you've seen it all, you've done it all. When you're looking at this thing now, and somebody is saying, I really don't want to take this vaccine, but I really want to keep my job. What are you going to say to them tonight? What's the last word that you want to give to people out there? Must people get vaccinated, you think? Or should people really just try and fight for their rights? As an experienced employee relations specialist, what's your call on this one?
Yeah, now you're putting me on the spot that I don't have a direct answer to that. I will say to this person, go and present your case, because I believe that in employment relationship, consultation is very important. It's the winner of them all. Negotiation, open consultation, joint decision making, it's very key in employment relation. So I will say to that person, go and present your case to your employer. If the nature of your job is that one that requires you to have contact with people and your employer has made vaccination mandatory. With consultation, sit with your employer, see if they cannot give you duties that you'll be able to do them while at home, and being accountable, of course, for your deliveries, and make sure that, they give you reasonable accommodation based on the reasons that you see, that prevent you from vaccinating. So I think anything that you do in open consultation with your employer, with good faith, you can get something out of it. So I would say that every employee should present their case to the employer and see where can they meet each other halfway, so that at the end of the day, the employer does not suffer in terms of service delivery. And you also don't live your life violating your dear principles, So I believe both parties can find each other halfway. That is my take on it. Because I can't say vaccinate and it's against your religion, your religion, for example, and the employer as well needs services. And if you want to be in the employer's employ, these are the rules. So open consultation, for me, it has always been a winner.
So in other words, you're refusing to answer my question. That's fine.
I've answered you. I'm saying consultation. Present your case, and the employer has an ear to listen. Meet each other halfway. That's my take, really.
No. Thank you very much, Mrs. Phasha. I really appreciate you coming through, give us your wisdom here. I think for people that have been worried about this thing, I hope some people have kind of gotten better answers and a better perspective about how to deal with this situation going forward. But let's see how things roll out. And I hope, of course, it doesn't get to the point of people being forced, as it looks like we're going to. But if it does get there, then it's Amaya, just go join the line and get the vaccination, man. Anyway, this is from me, Ronald. Thank you very much for coming through and joining us tonight. Mrs. Phasha, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. All the best to all employees, including me. But I vaccinated already. I was the first batch that vaccinated, because I was in the health sector. So I took advantage of it. I didn't have too many questions. There were not yet too many stories at that time. So
thank you for being our guinea pig. At least we knew it was safe after we saw you surviving. So we're happy about that.
Yes, thank you.
Please join us for another 30-minute session. We are having the former Zimbabwean international Peter Ndlovu joining us to talk about the young men who travel to Europe, play football, and come back broke. How do they avoid that? Otherwise, it is adios. Have a good evening, and see you this time next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.